everybody. Welcome to the latest installment of MSP Business School. And with me today, as always, I've got Tim McNeil and Rob Rogers from over at OSR. How you guys doing today?
Doing well, sir. How about yourself? I like the coat.
That's
pretty professional.
I'm trying to class things up as I'm heading
Take it up a notch.
out to IT Nation today and going to barnstorm the crowds.
Good.
But, I'd say anybody hears this, come visit me. But this will probably be out 2 weeks after the event.
Just say, hey, it was good to see everybody.
It's going to be exciting to see, a lot of our clients, and then, of course, getting the opportunity to see what's going on within the industry and who's making what changes today. So always some good announcements that come out of this one. But that's not what we're here to talk about today. What we're really here to talk about today is we're going to do another live case study. We got some really good feedback on our last one, and we got a great question. And this came from an MSP, and it came from two guys that run that MSP, Travis and Lenny. And what they shared with us is that they have a proposal out to a not-for-profit right now. And this not-for-profit has some challenges with their existing MSP, and certainly the desire is there to make a change. But they are worried about the onboarding process. And, we've gotten a glimpse into kind of how this was presented, and we're going to talk about that a little bit today, some of the things that we might suggest Travis and Lenny do differently as we move forward. But really, how can they get past this perception right now as it exists today? This is a 70-person client. This is a pretty sizable opportunity to their organization. So, with that said, we really want to break it down, kind of give our thoughts on what they can do to try to keep this engaged, keep from losing it out, and then really just talk about the realities many customers feel when there's transition. We talk about it kind of in the reverse all the time. You guys have heard me say it before. You can run over the cat 9 times before you get kicked out of an account, and that's because of some of the perceived pain that goes with transition.
Yeah.
Today's tools and approach models and the maturity of the MSPs should be able to overcome that pretty easily. So with that, I turn it over. I think, Tim, you took it first last time, so maybe we'll throw it to Rob this time and see what he's got to get started on it.
Okay. Yeah, sure. So, just to bring you guys up to speed and the audience up to speed a little bit, this is an account that they went through the entire proposal system, all their processes and everything was fine right up until the very end. And the objection is not on the pricing of the onboarding, right? The onboarding investment. The objection is the time that it's going to take and the disruption to the perceived disruption of the employees of this prospect. So one of the mistakes that were made was the 90-day checklist that the MSP is going to do to onboard. The stuff that you usually do in the background, right? All the work you have to do in the background was told to the prospect, and the prospect said 90 days. Holy moly, right? And so they started pulling back a little bit. So the done deal has issues now because of this perception that there's going to be a major disruption in the for the employees. They have to offboard one MSP, onboard another MSP, and the whole process is going to take 90 days, right? That's how they got themselves in trouble here. So an easy done deal got pulled back because of this. So that's where we're at. So that's what we have to kind of work through here on the episode today. How do we get past this now that they're stuck in this hole? What can you do to try and address this, and how can you get yourself out of this hole in the future? Right. So Brian, I'll throw it to you. You've seen these kind of things where every MSP has that first 90 days, right? But that should be in the background, right?
Yeah. We've talked about it here, 90 days of pain, right? But really that pain is the MSP going in and uncovering the problems from the previous vendor, oftentimes, the things that weren't protected, and the current state of the environment. None of that should have impact to the end user and what's going on there. But let's start with one key thing that I think I heard you say, which is they put this plan in front of the customer as part of the sales process. So while we're focusing on it today on the 70 customer, I wonder how many times this has cost them in the past with other customers seeing this long projected timeline. In my personal opinion, the timeline should come after contract signing. Hey, we're going to get you to come on board, and then we're going to put together a formal project plan that's going to show you how the transition is going to occur, right? And now you can boil it down to the steps that include the customer. Then you can maybe interject behind the scenes we're going to have to start reading those, those values, start seeing what data comes back to us. And we may come to you over the course of the next 90 days with some suggestions on how we can improve things from its current state. And that's how I personally do it from a sales process standpoint. I don't want to put anything out on paper. I don't want anything that's going to disrupt or slow the sales process. And anything that puts fear or uncertainty or doubt into the customer's head about choosing you, now you're competing against yourself, not your competitor.
Yeah.
And what are your thoughts, man?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think the issue that you run into here is, I think most MSPs listening to this podcast, and look, it stands to reason most MSPs have run into this scenario at one point or another, right? It just, whether by accident, self-inflicted, whatever. The reality is, sometimes it's easy to forget how difficult the perception is for a prospect to make that move. Too often, you as a salesperson or a business owner, you go on to a prospecting meeting, that terrible, you know what, I'm all set, or I'm all good, or just I can't even imagine making that move, right? So it's about creating that, like we've talked about a million times, creating that value during the sales process. And Brian, I agree with you. Like, it's not that you don't discuss the onboarding, but it could very easily scare people away because their perception is it's this huge beast that is impossible to control, when the reality is it can actually be quite easy, from the standpoint that, look, I know the way we used to run when Rob and I, the MSP that we worked at, we used to do onboardings and projects, especially large projects, off hours to minimize any downtime, right? I mean, people don't, hey, prospect, totally get it. That's why we do everything either behind the scenes, or we do it off hours so that you experience any downtime. Our goal is to always make sure that you are up and running. So with that being said, our onboarding is geared in that manner as well. I'd say that's probably the biggest thing that people should focus on.
Yeah, I'll tell you, the perception versus reality. I think that it's great that you want to communicate what you're doing so they understand, boy, you're going into this and you're going all in, right? And you're doing all these things. If you're going to have your entire 90-day onboarding that you guys do in your checklist type of format, that just can't be an information dump, right? It has to, that should come out maybe after everything comes out. If you want to over communicate, that's great. Communication's great, but it should never come out in a proposal stage, right? Under any circumstances, they just need to know they're taken care of, and the perception is it's going to be easy peasy. Let them know how it's going to, and how you're going to take control and make everything happy and easy for them. Showing them without explaining is, I think, one of the unforced errors that happen in this scenario.
Yeah, no, I agree with that, and what really it also comes down to is, those are details the customer should never see, right? You don't want the customer ever thinking that something is involved. We know behind the scenes, there could be tasks that we put into our documented checklist that are really mundane, very small, quick, easy to do tasks, but it's one more task perceptually to the customer. Mm-hmm. So, what I would suggest is, as they move forward in these selling situations, it's really saying to the customer, hey, we're going to come to you with a project plan upon acceptance. This project plan is to ensure a seamless transition. Now, while there could be some speed bumps, we've got safeguards built into it to overcome it. And we've done this many times before. And then really help them understand from the end user perspective, there will be no disruption, or at least nothing major. Anything that's going to cause disruption, we're going to coordinate with you, just like Tim said, and do it either after hours, on a weekend, or whatever else. But in this day and age, most of what we do doesn't come with any disruption, maybe save, changing administrative passwords if required, right? So, there's really a limitation to what should be out there with the customer. And now you should be going back to the benefit. Hey, you're struggling with your vendor today. Communication is one of the challenges. This is how we communicate with you, and then you can say, this is the plan. Hey, we're going to get you out the plan. First 90 days, we're going to uncover whatever we need to discuss in terms of challenges we inherit. And then we go into our QBR story, right? We're going to meet with you quarterly, and you'll see how we present that data back to you to start building a long-term forecast. Now you can be selling the value. The perception, I think, erroneously a lot of these guys have is the more stuff I throw in my proposal, the more value I'm driving to the customer, and the more transparency I'm giving, the more value I'm giving to the customer. But judge your audience, man. These are business people. These aren't tech people. They don't know what half of what's in your project plan means. What they want to know is what do they got to do.
Yeah.
So they got themselves into this situation, Timmy, right? So so now here they are, right? And this is where you excel. Now they're behind the 8 ball. An easy deal at the 9th hour is now in jeopardy, all because of this objection. Like, what do you suggest, Timmy, what to help them here?
I mean, I think it goes back to, I think it goes back a lot to what Brian was just saying. Now, unfortunately, they're going to have to put a project plan together before this company signs to kind of walk them through how it's going to go and what it's going to be like. You would ideally like to do that after they sign up. But I think in this scenario, you kind of almost, that's for lack of it's kind of, it is what it is. You're going to have to go to them with that plan and say, this is what we're going to do. And this is how it's going to look. Now, another thing, depending on if that prospect, depending on when they've made a move before in the past, whatever that looks like, from MSP to MSP. Also, look, find a client that's a rock star client that you had a great onboarding with, or you have a great relationship with, and explain to them you should be talking to these people. And this was a concern that they had. And then, also, not for nothing, I feel like most MSPs are good about this. There are definitely some that are still stubborn as all hell. But clients come and go. There should be enough professionalism in the MSP community where if an MSP loses a client, that they actually, in a roundabout way, help with that transition. I can tell you, just again from experience, when Rob and I were in the MSP space, we would get a new client. Every once in a while, we'd run into an MSP that just would not want to give us information. Let me tell you, as the MSP that is not willing to give out that information, a chance to work with a client that's leaving again, make sure it's a smooth exit.
Yeah.
Because if it's not, I promise you're not going to get that client back.
Don't salt the earth.
Yeah. Because look, shit happens.
Yeah.
People make mistakes. People go back to
where they came from. It happens sometimes.
Exactly. Yep. So I know that's kind of off track, but just more of an FYI. But that's what the couple of things that I'd recommend in general.
Brian, what about you?
Well, first I got a question for you, Rob, and I don't know if Travis and Lenny shared this, but you mentioned that the customers got some apprehension based on the 90-day. Is the perception too that they're going to have to keep, did Lenny and Travis share with you whether the perception was too from the customer seat? 90 days, does that mean I have to pay both bills? Does that mean both integrators are involved? Because that's not going to be good. So, maybe you could share a little bit about what the thoughts were there before we move on.
It was not discussed, so it had to be handled again. So that piece had to be handled as well. So it opened up a whole new set of open-ended questions going down the line, because they didn't jump in front and say, this is going to happen just like this. It's going to take this long, and this is what's going to happen. And it was, I think what happened, they got a little bit complacent because the deal was, it was literally the paperwork was going across the table and signatures were happening. And then out of the corner of the eye, they saw 90 days, right? It was that type of scenario. So then they had to, just to your point, they had to explain it's not going to be a 90-day double pay, right? Where you're paying your old vendor and us. So they all of a sudden, all these questions started coming up. And when questions start coming up like that, walls start building up again, right? And so that's what, yes. So to you answer your question in a very long-winded way, yes, they had to handle that objection as well.
But you got the answer there, and that's really it. But that's something that you got to be very clear, I think, up front too, because if I was a customer, I'd be like, is this going to now cost me 2x for 90 days just so I can get to the next thing? And then, of course, my perception would be these two groups are never going to be able to work closely together.
Brian, when you did this, did you have a month overlap?
No,
typically,
no, we would assume responsibility in most cases right away. But here's the thing, and this is totally out of the bounds of what they're talking about here, but something you got to do to get your house in order before you can even really be able to object this. If you don't have a solid onboarding process that's documented, that you're consistently able to deliver with minimal pain to both your customer and yourself, then that's the problem you got to solve first. Because it doesn't matter what you're going to say to this customer here. If you know it's going to be pain, that's going to cause a problem, and it's going to cause a disharmonious relationship from jump, right?
Yeah.
But when we did it, we really focused, and I see most MSPs doing this these days, really focused on, hey, have we got this process down pat? What are the steps that we have to take? The more detail oriented we can be on onboarding, making sure we have the data capture of all information, setting the tone with the customer post sale on what's going to be owed on them and what their obligations are to go to the next step. We'd have no problem going in as our team day one, changing the passwords, disabling the customer's account, going into the firewalls and switches, disabling those accounts, and moving forward. And if we couldn't get into those switches, or the customer is playing hardball, we'd reconfigure the firewall, because then at least we knew we had the perimeter done. We'd make sure there was no backdoors on the servers, and we would move forward. And that would sometimes require a little negotiation with the customer to do it off hours, but usually then they were pretty accommodating, because we'd say, look, we've been trying to work with your vendor and they're not being as forthcoming as we'd like them to be with X, Y, and Z. In order for us to do this safely, we need some time, and it's going to cause some disruption. So you got to find us a window. And that's how we approached it, because one, I didn't want to be beholden to another vendor for any period of time, because that's only going to cause pain or give them the opportunity to try to to damage me in the process, right?
Yeah, that's true.
Second thing is, I don't want my customer paying anything more than they need to pay.
Yep.
Right. So if they're coming to us, whatever that deal may be, whether there's onboarding, whether there's not, it's, hey, if December 30th is your last day with your other vendor, my first bill is going to be January 1st, and we're going to work on a plan so we assume control on January 1st.
Yeah,
I think one of the on December 30th, you had a couple of days left on the bill,
Yeah, their onboarding process is completely on lockdown. I think one of the issues that they had is they're so proud of it that they wanted to show it, right? And the customer doesn't care, right? The customer just wants everything to be easy on their side. They don't want to have to deal with all the other stuff. So that part is on lockdown. Yeah, Brian, do you have any other, now that they're stuck in this position here and they're like on the back foot, do you have any ideas like Timmy had? Well, what can they do here?
Well, I mean, because they're on the back foot, it's really just getting up front with the customer and saying, okay, let's get together again, put all the cards on the table. And what I want to know is face-to-face. Yeah, okay. It's got to be face-to-face in some way, shape, or form. This can't be done via email. You're never going to solve it, right? 100%. Yeah. But then the other part of this is then you just got to say, it sounds so cliche when I say it, but what's the fear? What is the real fear? Is the fear overlapping vendors? Is the fear the money? What is your fear? Well, the fear is 90 days. No, that's not a real fear. It's going to take us 90 days to get the information we need to make solid recommendations for you, because we just got to do data capture. That's not the 90 days. There's going to be some things that we're going to have to tweak and fix on our end for 90 days. But really, my time to you should be a day, maybe two, depending on size and scope. But even with a 70-person company, what can they have? 10 servers, or cloud services equating to 10 servers. What can they have? A firewall. What can they have? Couple switches, 2-4 max. I mean, there's a lot of endpoints. That's what it comes down to. So I don't think, I think they just got to really reassure them at this point. Hey, sorry, we made a mistake. We are proud of our process. So we articulate it very heavily in our quotes. And that's probably a shame on us. But I think we can get around your fears by simply sharing how it's going to be from your seat. And some of that 90 days, that's our problem. That's what we're willing to take on. And then what they got to do, and then retrench, you got to go look at that proposal and say, how do I take my 90-day story and make it marketing speak? And I hate to say it like that because, some people say, oh, as soon as it's marketing speak, it's not real. But you got to get it in some sort of format where you say, look, our transitions go smooth because we have a detail-oriented plan.
Mhm.
In that plan, we're close to your account for the next 90 days. We are actively monitoring it to see what we can't see on day one. And in that process, we'll take steps. This should have minimal, if any, impact to you, but there may be times we're going to need some escalation from your team. And that should be how you define, the 90-day transition in that sense. Because now it's not about, we're going to be doing this and we may need to come to you, but realistically, you should be all set.
Okay. So then what you just did there, I wrote it all down, Brian. So just to give everybody kind of like a bullet point list, you clarified their objection, you analyzed it, and then you empathized. Then you neutralized what they were saying by giving them the actual facts to it. And then you influenced them with the benefits of moving forward.
Jesus, and then I know what I'm doing for a minute there.
Right. And then you actually asked to move forward. Right. Yep. So you clarified, empathized, neutralized, and influenced. Okay. All right.
I like that. We need to make a quote card on that for
when we
put this one up. Catch that, Rachel?
That's right. Yep. It's can I move forward?
Yeah.
Yep. No, can I move forward? So Tim, what are your thoughts? Because I think, are we getting near the end of our time, guys?
We are, fellas. We are. We're at 18 minutes now.
I believe so. I mean, look at everything you just said. I agree with. It's the mistake that they made is they gave too much information, which tends to happen. That can happen in this industry more so than some, just because engineer mind, they like things. They like everybody to know what's going on, and they need to have a plan, and that's completely understandable. I think during the sales process, just understanding the personalities that are on the other side of the table will definitely help. Making sure that look at the end of the day, like less is more. Less is more. One thing that was taught to me, just drilled into my head again, when Rob and I were still in the MSP space, the owner of the company that we worked at he was the top 1% salesperson. It's flat out one of the best salespeople I've ever seen. And he would constantly, whether it was emails, whether it was calls, meetings, less is more, right? Like that was always his theme. And that's one thing that that's always stuck with me and always helped me personally as a salesperson. That every MSP out there should be focused on, like not always giving all of the information, giving a summary, asking questions, make sure they answer first. Because if you ask a question and then you answer that question, you lose.
You failed.
So make sure that you ask the right questions right out of the gate. You get the right information. Less is more. And that's how to do it. That's what you do.
100%.
That statement's so true, because to this day, when I look at some of the deals I still lose in life, it's usually because I went too deep. I went too far down the rabbit hole. Customer got overwhelmed. We show them every shiny little toy that's out there and what we're going to do for them, and they fade away.
Yeah.
Maybe in the time we got left, let's play through what we're going to do if we take all this advice and the customer objects. So we've gone in, we've hit the bullet points you outlined, Rob, because I certainly can't repeat them. And they come back and go, I'm still scared. What are some approach models you can take at that stage so you just don't walk away from the deal? How do you take that person that's still scared and reassure them?
Okay. So before we do that, what is scared? Right. So intellectually, they understand what's going on, but the alligator brain, right? The reptile brain is scared. The fight or flight brain is scared. Yep. So we have to simplify everything, come to them and show them and tell them and go through it. And I 100% agree. This is not an email. This is a face-to-face. This is big, right? This is big. And so on my side, it would be a show and tell type of operation on what exactly they're going to see and what exactly we are going to do. And you've got to leave the fight or flight part of their brain in my.
Yeah. Well, and also getting them, sitting down with them face to face and and getting them to a point where they remember why they were going to go with you to begin with.
Ooh.
Right? Reset
Go.
expectations. Like,
reset
hey,
expectations. Wow.
This is why,
it's almost like you're a professional.
Yeah. Well, this, and this is why you said that you wanted to make a move. Like, these were your pain points. Are these still your pain points? Yeah, they are. Okay, well, some of the things we talked about are this, that, and the other thing. This is how we're going to overcome it. Do you see how that still makes sense? Yeah, I do. Okay. All right, sign the damn paper. Let's get this going.
Yeah, and I really like that reset expectations, because sometimes that's often overlooked. And I'm glad you said that, Timmy, because that's kind of where I was going. It's like, you got to go back to what originally got you in the seat. Yeah. And get that piece out in front, and then be, again, I'm very direct, because why not? The worst I can do is lose, right? So then I'll be like, and what do you want me to do to prove it? How can I guarantee it? How can I prove it to you? If they look at me and go, well, I want to know that if things go unsmooth, you'll give me some sort of credit. Okay, fine. Like make your decision on what you're willing to offer. Some people don't want to offer anything, and that's cool. That's your business decision. But I'm like, what's, take away the fear. Resetting expectations gets them back to the point where they were making the decision. But what else can you do to kind of alleviate that final fear? And sometimes it's just that the knowledge of, if something happens, there's restitution.
Yeah. Yeah. Fair enough.
100%. Yeah.
All right, fellas, we're coming up to the end of this episode. I want to thank you both for jumping in. Brian, you're down there, schmoozing and doing all the IT Nation awesomeness.
That's
it. So
man.
I appreciate you jumping on with us and being all dressed up in your big fancy coat.
That's it.
Yeah.
Don't hit me 'cause I'm sexy, bro.
Well said. Okay, so that's it for us for this episode. If you have any questions like these, we love doing these kind of questions for everybody. Please reach out to us through our email. You can reach us on mspbusinessschool.com or anywhere you think you get your podcast, and we look forward to answering more questions like this for everybody. So as always, guys, I appreciate your time, and we'll talk soon.
Sounds great. Thanks guys.